This is Guns, Knives, and Watches, and this is a revisit to the Survive Knives GSO, whatever the hell this is, because it really doesn't matter. They don't make it anymore. This is a GSO that has a 6-inch blade from the beginning of the cutting edge to the tip, if you measure it linearly, and then about a 6.8 inch length if you measure it from the handle. Now this Survive knife is made of CPM 3V steel. It has a fire notch. It has that kind of deal there, which I really don't like, and I've said I don't like it. If you'd round those edges there, that would be much preferable to what we have as far as those sharp edges, just as far as being able to get something in and get something out in case you've burned the ends of your paracord already. And we've got this saber ground blade, flat grind, whatever. It is not a hollow grind. And what I've done to it, which is kind of had to do to it, because the knife, the sheath, everything are a really good design. I don't like how closed off that is. I don't like the length of the handle, because the handle in this configuration just barely fits my hand, and I have a pretty good size hand, but I have a size, size 10, which is a large. But in this configuration, it feels kind of like I'm being forced into a smaller situation. This feels like it's, I don't have much space there, okay, in a draw cut across your chest. Another thing I really didn't like was this choil, but, that's neither here nor there. If it was my knife, I would have just put a small choil on it, and I would have taken the handle up to here. But we've already known from my bitching about the Pathfinder knife and everything else, everybody gets to design things and do things the way in which they want to. So the small handle, the tight configuration there, the fact that it had this big finger choil, they're not my cup of tea, okay? The Kydex sheath is really good, really well designed. In fact, one of the best sheaths I've ever seen, which was the only reason that I really addressed the knife in the beginning. Drain holes, will clip to about anything, MOLLE compatible here, really good design on the sheath. The knife leaves some things to be desired, but for the right person with the right size hand, and I guess I have a large size hand, this knife's perfect. The one thing that I cannot get around and could not get around, and at the time it was a $5 option, was the fire notch, because this thing did not have a full flat grind across the top, did not have 90-degree corners, and it still doesn't. But if you can see, mine doesn't have the finish of a Survive Knives knife, which is a stonewash finish. Mine has a brushed finish, and my jimping right there through there is much sharper than what comes on a Survive Knives stock. The reason that is because I've actually ground this down and sanded it and put a finish on it, and then I cut my own fire notch here. Not similar to the way they do it, but I just did it to where it was as the least amount of intrusion to the structural integrity of the spine of this knife that I possibly could. Also rounded it because my notch is probably closer back here than they normally would. But I thought, engineering wise, my weakest part of my knife is right through here. This is much stronger, so here, if I put a small little notch, it's really not going to affect it. Because as I said, the weakest part of the knife is actually right here, where that hole's drilled in it, and then right through there. Not because the hole's drilled in it, but that's where it will fail. Anyway, and rounded it off and everything, and tried not to have any square corners, just for ergonomics, this, that, or the other. Because if I'm going to use a choil, my thumb is generally farther forward than what the jimping would be, and that gives my thumb a nice little notch. Now, did I know that when I did it? No. It's something that I learned through the process. Because when I cut something, I'm going to come down on it. I'm going to cut the blade through it. It's just something that I do. I'm not competitive rope cutting all the time. But reaching out there with my thumb gives me that extra leverage to go through that actual cut. He no longer charges the $5 for the notch. It's just an option nowadays. You can get it or not get it. If to give some creative criticism, he's redesigned the knife to where it has a longer handle now, to where it allows people like me to actually use the knife and not feel like I'm running out of real estate, or that the knife is forcing me into the confines of the grip. He's done quite a few other things. I don't really know. I'm not an expert on them. My next thing that I would do to this knife, because it has such good manufacturing techniques, this, there, the other, and I'm going to go through and I'm going to start beating the hell out of this knife now that I've put this notch in it, just so that I can strike a ferro rod. Because if you know, on my other video, I tried striking a rod, this, there, the other, and then one of the people made a comment, well, you know, any of my knives that he's made that has a 90-degree back on it will strike a ferro rod well. Yeah, but how do you know to ask for him to put on a survival knife that's made out of, you know, this S3V, which is not a stainless steel, to make it have a 90-degree spine? So you'd have to be part of a forum. So, hence, on the previous video, I said this must be a forum thing. This must be a click thing. This must be some group of people that communicate in some way other than what I would do, because I don't participate on any forums. None. The only forum that I've ever participated in is a watch forum, and that was years ago, and I was one of the moderators. And that forum is still going very strong today. But since, you know, I am not part of a forum, and I would not have known, because there's no indication on the website to ask for that. I did not know that if you didn't get a fire notch cut in the back of yours, you have no ability to strike a ferro rod, because there's no 90-degree spine, because there is such an extreme chamfer on the back of each side of this. And that may not be the exact word, because I really don't get into knife speak. It's like the design of this knife. You can't go to Survive Knives right now and them have a knife that's this exact description. You can't buy this knife anymore. They have up to a 5.1, then they go to a 7.0, which I don't believe this is. This would be more of a 6.8 given their nomenclature. And they don't even have a picture of the 7.0 because it's on pre-order, and then they have a 10 or a 12 where they have this or that or the other, and and they make a lot of knives that are smaller than the 5.1. If I was going to go buy one right now, if I was going to put money on it, I would get the GSO 5.1 and probably be very happy with it, because he's addressed most of these design limitations, or these limitations that he's put on the knife by the design. As I said, the sheath I can say absolutely nothing bad about. It is the absolute best execution of a sheath that I've ever seen. The knife, he's addressing some of those issues years later, because if anyone knows, that video was on the other channel. Then I imported it over to the new channel, and I don't know how old the new channel is, but I'm saying it's coming up on 1.5 years, so this was probably a couple years ago. So a couple years later, some of these things that I said about the first set, and in fact I was probably so pissed off on the first video that I wouldn't honestly tell you about all of the problems with the knife, because it's like I go into a restaurant. I'm not going to tell you what is wrong with what you're cooking. If you serve me something and you're a competitor, the last thing I'm going to do is tell you every little detail about what is wrong with your design, with your this, that, or the other. I will pick out certain specific points that are obvious, and I will wail on you with them. I will sit there and beat you over the head over and over and over and over again. The inability of this knife to strike a ferro rod and to be a survival knife is heresy, in my own opinion. But now he no longer charges the $5 for the notch. Kudos to him. He is fixing the handle. He has done all these other things. And 2 years later, this knife is going to be a better product. So if you are going to go out and buy one of these knives, because they have such a good sheath, because the steel is so good, because he's fixing the handle, he no longer charges for the notch, this, that, or the other, I would buy the GSO 5.1, I would pre-order it, and I would be very happy with it. But it took 2 years to get there. And as I said, if you were my competitor, you know, the last thing I do is basically sit there and give people all of the ins and outs of the industry and this, that, or the other, and or even get into what I do. But if I was to go out and buy one, I'd buy a GSO 5.1. I'd be very happy with it and be happy with the design changes, because as everyone knows, I was not happy with this knife. It had some tremendous problems, and I have gone through it. I've reground the back of the knife. I've put a notch in it, because even with my grinding, there is still some of that edge there. You can see it glinting back at you of the extreme chamfering that he actually does on this. And why, I assume, is because of the way it goes in the sheath. I have no earthly idea. I don't care. I wouldn't care if it was me, but that's just my own thing. I would rather be able to strike a ferro rod pretty easily. But as I said, I've addressed that issue, and this is my revisit, and that is what I would honestly recommend. And if you carry anything out into the field, that 5.1 would be the one that I would probably go for, because this is about a 16-ounce knife, hair over, but you know, not enough to matter. And it has a lot of features that are really good, really positive, and down the road, no one gets designs right their first few go-arounds. But there were some extreme problems with this knife for any person who really uses the knife and doesn't just go on a forum and this, that, or the other and know that you have to ask for a 90-degree spine or this, that. You know, it was just an absurd situation with an absurd set of preconceived concepts, ideas, this, that, or the other, that one would have to know. And the only way to know that is if you are watching a lot of YouTube videos or on a bunch of forums and this, that, or the other, and it was just insane. So I pulled that video over to the new channel, and now I'm going to revisit because it's taken me this much time, and it's taken me going to his website and realizing that he's actually correct and addressed some of the issues for me to re-look at the knife, repair it, fix some of the design issues that I can, which is the only one that I can, is basically the back grind, and then put out another video. If you want something like this, which CPM 3V is a very, very, very strong steel, depending on, you know, if you can heat treat it to a high enough temperature, and you know, jimping feels a lot better now. Fire notch is good. I've almost got a 90-degree spine on the back of it. You know, I just really want to do a precise job. The precision of the job is more important to me than the speed. So anyway, this is Guns, Knives, and Watches, and have a good one. And this is my Survive knives redo about 2 years later, my modification of the knife. And if you wanted to take this knife from this manufacturer, Survive Knives, out of the wilderness, my honest to God recommendation for a survival knife would be the 5.1. This is Guns, Knives, and Watches. Have a good one.